Okay, so what are we doing today? Today we're actually doing another product design. I just realized about one thing because of the stuff that I've been thinking about around knowledge spaces and everything. I noticed there's a piece that is missing, which is a decoupling of like, and again, like this, I'm just jumping straight cold into the right into the cold water here, right? But currently, when you're in a workspace, currently like the main class citizen of these, and what we will be doing today is a bit of product design. So I'm gonna be building up a prompt here, and then I'll let Grog run these, right? But let's say let's pick any of these, right? So I'm just like I'm kind of like just realizing that there has been basically just I've been kind of building everything glued to workspaces, right? So you have, let's say, engineering, right? And then in engineering, here is a very, very high level workspace, right? But that's the workspace. The workspace is what am I doing? The workspace is kind of the container for data generation and it's kind of like the context if you think about these, right? Because let's think about this. We have in the workspace, you have the knowledge map. The knowledge map is this guy here. You build these stuff up, right? You can infinitely build these. You can build, you can play, you can explore, right? There's a few building utilities in here. So you've got DAX, right? You can basically build how the map is evolving. It's everything around these. So I might have to change maybe the language a bit here, right? The workspace itself is kind of like the main class it is in the map here. You've got goals in the workspace, you've got context, and you can actually just do Dante search, you can add links, you can like build up context files, you can simulate the workspace, and you've got a bunch of settings, right, to make it private, public, AYCL, so basically make it available as a workspace to sell. And this is what this is what I'm now thinking about that probably needs its own thing, because currently the concept of a knowledge region is what you're seeing here, right? It's the circle here. The knowledge region is and on certain systems defines a space, which basically, we will evolve over time. Now it's a very simplistic thing. We call this knowledge configuration space, and we've got a 64 dimensions initial version v0 of this knowledge space. Knowledge space is basically where we are going to be placing. It's where we are embedding. It's where we're embedding the proof of work data, right? It's what we use as map for knowledge. And essentially, this is where the validation happens, right? So think of what I'm trying to think of, and I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use Excalidraw. I'm going to use Excalidraw. We're going to go somewhere else here, right? So we are talking about today. We're talking about knowledge regions. Basically elevating them. Elevating knowledge regions. The reason I'm saying this is because I feel like this needs to be decoupled in a way that the creation of them can be decoupled, right? So you can browse regions in here. You can browse regions in the system. Those are the ones that are created and belong to this workspace. And the only reason I did that is because I originally, the way that you can create custom knowledge regions is by using the proof of work data here. And I already felt uncomfortable. Now I realize that I already felt uncomfortable with TabBench, because TabBench is something that I haven't talked a lot about, but TabBench is basically a synthetic tool, or like a feature set that lets agents generate proof of work data in order to create enough data so that you can craft a knowledge region, right? The biggest question that I want to solve today is, do knowledge regions needs to be created, leave in the context of a workspace. And my question, my answer is no. I think my answer is no. Basically, I think a workspace data capture. The workspace is data capture, and the workspace baseline for the harness. The workspace is what encapsulates the way that the harness behaves, right? Now, knowledge regions is another story, and knowledge regions can be actually completely defined by just using proof of work data. So they are basically, knowledge regions only depend on POE. POE is kind of like our spice, right? POE is the essence of uncertain systems, proof of work. So the concept of proof of work is what we need as glue for all these concepts. So I think in a way what's happening here is I need to let's try to do the following. So we've got here in projects and community TabBench, right? TabBench is basically think about benchmarks for agents, but this is not really TabBench. I'm not so sure I'm framing this the right way. I'm not so sure this is what we want to do. TabBench. I don't think we need an actual benchmark. But I want a way to create knowledge regions. But maybe you know what? Maybe it is TabBench. But TabBench should be something that we then evaluate against human bench. You know what I mean? And the core API that is used, the core concept behind TabBench can be used to create knowledge regions. What I'm starting to think about is the creation of knowledge regions being an independent process and not so much this here, right? So here's the region builder, and what we're doing here is you pick all the human POE, you keep you can filter by link. Give it a name, and the idea is you can build regions by just getting this data from here. Maybe we'll leave these. This is just something that it kind of creates knowledge regions local to the workspace. And maybe that is kind of fine. I'm starting to think about this right now. What I'm thinking is I should be able to pick and import the knowledge region, not just create one inside the marketplace here, right? The whole point being that I want to make those first class citizens so that people can invest in them. So I can actually be someone whose role is, I want to build a knowledge region. I still have to find a way to actually sell these in a way. You know what I mean? I'm trying to connect the dots as I build these things, right? Because we've got, yeah. The workspaces alone are just data capture. You still need to import a knowledge region. Either you create it from your own people, and then that's a nice vehicle to do that. You create a workspace. That workspace basically something you expose to an expert team. They create proof of work. You create the region inside the space, inside the workspace. But essentially, you're using the workspace as data collection, which kind of like then, if you think about these, it makes kind of sense that you have these here. The knowledge links are the whole point. You have a tab bench, so you can actually get the agents to work with it, right? And so you're getting the agents to construct these, and that's fine. I guess you want to construct in the context of a workspace because because you like the way you've crafted, and then you want to do those knowledge regions very, very local to the workspace. These maybe it's still sort of like it still kind of makes sense, Human PO, tab bench PO should be agentic PO, and tab bench is basically timed agent exercises with time-submitted sessions. So you give the tab bench link to an agent, and then the agent just kind of like runs against a workspace. That makes sense. I mean, it also just makes sense from the perspective of you might want to evaluate an agent against a specific workspace. That's okay. That's kind of okay. I think I'm not really gonna change that. I'm just thinking to expand on these. I'm thinking to expand on these in the sense that maybe I want to be able to create a knowledge knowledge region independent of a workspace. Let's assume that's what we want to do, right? How do we do it? Because the whole point is the workspace helps you gather data. But what if I just want... I should just be able to generate PO data. Like, I should just be able to generate PO data on anything that I want, right? I don't care where I'm sourcing the problems. Maybe I have like a pool of maybe I have something. I'm building a script that basically pulls humanities last exam data set and makes an agent or a human run through that, and then maybe that's an auth. You know what I mean? How would this look like? Let's say that I want to create a knowledge region, right? So I'm in dashboard, and here I have workspaces, usage, and maybe I'm gonna have a new section called knowledge regions, basically, right? So basically have a new section called knowledge regions, right? It should be the same thing, right? Knowledge region. A knowledge region can be one created from within a workspace. How are they currently codified, actually? Created, because they are essentially just a center point, right? How do we do this? How do we create them from PO algorithmically? I think what it does is don't modify anything, just in case. Oh crap, that's the wrong repo. That's the wrong repo. Because essentially what we're doing is here. A knowledge region ends up being this, like a point in the space and an area around it, right? The idea of selecting PO is that you draw a region around them. I think that's what is happening, right? So you need those embeddings. So this is because you always need a set of goals. You also always need you need snapshots. You actually need the snapshots. The snapshots are basically PO plus goals, right? Because proof of work is just data, so it's PO plus goals. Centroid, mean radius, cosine threshold, cohesion, PO events, the snapshot score, subject embedding, operator selects people and settings knowledge. Yeah. People, region. Vectors for each selected subject. Load latest snapshot. Centroid of the vectors. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's not in. Okay. The ball is sized to just cover the weakest member with an 8% cosine haircut. I'm not so sure that's the right way to do this, but essentially, yes, we are looking at at snapshots, right? We're looking at snapshots. We're looking at snapshots. So we need to create snapshots, right? We need to create snapshots. Snapshots means we need a way to specify goals. Now, the way that we can specify goals in the workspace is you have them in the workspace or you define them ad hoc as well, right? So that's something we can still do. We can design an interface that it's not really an interface actually. Like, so now how we gather the data, the workspaces give you that interface, right? The workspaces give you that interface. The tap interface should be what we're doing, but what about if it's a human interface, right? You still need to use the PO API. I guess that's the point, right? Because currently the way this works is workspace dialog or context, right? and then user, and then PO, and then snapshots. So what's happening is the workspace influences the context. The context is given to the user. The user generates the PO with the tap, ILE, whatever. The PO is taking from the workspace plus the PO come the snapshots, the goals. So this here's basically the goals. And from the snapshots, we can then define the regions. If we want to let anyone, define a region, right? We only need this path. So we need ad hoc goals, right? But and then and essentially the idea is if we want to define regions without the context of a reference to a workspace, we can just expose this flow. So PO is like that is also tab bench, right? So you could also just say, you know, it's fine. User could also be an agent. That's the point. So maybe creating a knowledge region is nothing else than currently the PO API. I forgot. So how is the PO API structured to support tap, ILE, and tab bench input? Because essentially this means the only thing you would need to create knowledge regions is you need to be able to capture this data. So I need to only be able to say this is you know, knowledge region ID, knowledge region. I gotta be careful because I do not necessarily need to introduce a fake kind of concept in a way. Maybe I just let people reference external workspaces, right? So basically, if you give to the API as an external reference, because I know the API kind of has the workspace ID as reference, then essentially that is kind of your workspace. You just need ad hoc goals for snapshot generation. Okay, post source tab bench basically. Should be fairly simple to do that. And Paul always needs a workspace reference, right? Also, because this might just be a simple design change, and also, how can I trigger snapshot the API. Can it be done with ad hoc goals? That's the real question. And I have to wrap it up here, guys. But I guess you're seeing where I'm going, right? I do not need to reinvent the knowledge region. It already exists. It's okay if it makes a reference to a workspace, because this lets you encapsulate the context of where this comes from, and it lets you encapsulate PO if you have multiple sources of PO, and then it's like you have an ID that's kind of your context, right? And so if you want to use an external concept of a workspace, it's all fine. Maybe, and only maybe, what needs to happen is that the knowledge region happens out, knowledge creation happens outside of the workspace. Although it kind of makes sense to work in here, right? You're in here, you knowledge regions. Maybe, yeah, maybe it is what it is. Maybe it just has to be like that. You can create a workspace. You have to always create a workspace, even if it's just an empty workspace. You know what I mean? Because at least it defines the context in which you're creating regions. It's for the data capture. It's just really for the data capture. So maybe you actually have to create a workspace. Okay, kind of like went full circle back into the beginning. See you guys tomorrow.